There it is.
I'm gonna keep refreshing them constantly.
Okay.
So there it is. All right. Okay. Open. Open Zoom URLs. Just, I haven't done this in so many, and so.
Um,
Yeah, this meeting is being, okay, yeah, okay.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me on the computer?
mm-hmm.
Okay, say something.
Can
Say
you hear
something.
me?
I can't hear you.
Um, hmm. Can you hear me
Mute.
now?
So you can hear me, but
I
I
can
can't hear you.
want me to end and try again?
Oh, wait. Say it louder again.
Do you want me to end and try again?
Say something again.
Say something, I'm giving up on you.
Say it again.
Hello?
Oh, there we go. Okay. I hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me
Okay.
from this far away?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's all good now.
Okay.
You're almost up. I'm getting you loaded here. Okay, there you are.
Oh, on the big screen.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go. Our special guest has arrived.
Orpheus, stop. Oh, wow. So many people.
Yeah. So, everyone, this is Hannah Schofield, my former student and the writer of The Magic City. Welcome, Hannah. Okay, so Hannah is going to be talking to us a little bit about story and story structure today and about the film, and she'll answer any questions that you might have and stuff like that. Yeah, this is really awesome that she can be here with us virtually. That being said, Hannah, I'll just let you go ahead and introduce yourself and kind of talk about how this kind of like whole thing happened. You can talk about the whole USC thing, and then we'll eventually talk about your little trip to Cleveland. All right. So Hannah, take it away.
Okay, well, all right. I may not be as energetic as normal because it's 8 in the morning and I'm not a morning person. But thank you, Robert, for letting me speak to your class. I'm very excited. I've known Professor Corna since he first started teaching at my undergrad, all the way to kind of when he, wasn't till now, right? So I've known him as a film professor from the beginning, and I really respect him because he completely redid and remodeled my undergrad's film program and made it more like a USC sort of like master's production program. And so basically I just want to highlight Professor Corna a little bit because he's amazing. He gave tons of opportunities to me and my classmates, even my brother, because my brother and I went to school kind of at the same place. And this Magic City is one of those projects in which if Professor Corna had not been really active in pushing us in school, I would have never had this opportunity. So that being said, I'm Hannah Schofield, as you know. I am actually a professor as well. I do kind of steal a lot from Robert's teaching style, but I'm a professor at a school originally Houston Baptist University, but now it's Houston Christian University recently. But I teach screenwriting and I teach film, and so that's who I am now. And I also work for different people doing screenwriting. So that's who I am now, right? Let me go back to when I first kind of got, I don't know, kind of got into this project, I guess. So I think right now I'm 25. When Robert first asked me to work on this project, I was like 19 or 20, so it was pretty much my first feature. I'm trying to figure out how to type. Robert, do you have any particular questions on how to get me telling this in the right order?
Okay, so, first of all, let's rewind and talk about like you were undergrad and then, our conversation about USC and then how that kind of happened.
Oh, okay, okay. So undergrad, I was just making just like films from the beginning, and I remember actually the very first time I made a short film, the very first semester, Robert was there. He was like, you know what? I feel like you would be good at USC. And I'm like, okay, like I'm like, yeah, nah, I'm not gonna get in. Um, and he was always giving me jobs, he was always giving me things to do, things to write, worked together really closely with him in undergrad. And then one night, it was actually like right before it was my senior year, and I was interning with the communications department, and I was just busy all the time. And he walks up and he's like, "Hey, today's the last day to submit to the USC MFA writing program." And I'm like, "Oh," and he's like, "You did submit your application, right?" And I'm like, uh so I spend like my entire rest of the night responding to prompts or writing writing stuff and putting stuff together. And then I remember Robert was like, comes in, he's like, "I just got your recommendation letter written," and like we're all just like frantic, like it's like we're on set. And then but yeah, he's an USC alum, so I just sent it. I'm like, nothing's gonna happen. But no, I think yeah, he was able to help get me into USC, and I had an amazing time. And well, there was the pandemic that kind of sucked, but besides that, we just kept like, yeah, I got into the USC writing program and wrote and wrote and wrote, and then that's actually when like Robert contacted me, I think after the first year, and said we need to finish the project that we started, because he had introduced me to the Magic City project in undergrad after a screenwriting class. And yeah, I could talk about, do you want me to talk about that now? What do you want me to talk about?
Yeah, so yeah, so you was at USC and then, pandemic was happening, it was about, it was like right before the pandemic happened, I think, when we started, when we kind of when we restarted the Magic City.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was right before-
Yes. So what?
Yeah, it was about 3 or 4 months before the pandemic, and we're like, hey, let's get this thing going again. And then so you started writing it in, I think you were in LA at the time when you started writing it again.
Yeah, so okay. Yeah, so we, like I said, 19 or 20, Robert took me to his office and he's like, "Hey, you want to work on this project with me? I have this idea. I have some of the main beats. I want you to write it because you're like a female and just different reasons." And I'd never written a feature before, so I was so nervous, and we kind of worked out the beats in his office. And then that like summer or something, I wrote like 60 pages of this 50 actually, of this screenplay. And then I kind of put it aside. I had taken creative liberty. I added Julio as a character, and I didn't hear anything about it, and I didn't bring it up because I was like nervous, so I just like let it kind of sit there. And then I'm graduated, I'm in the MFA program, and then Robert calls and he's like, "Hey, so I think it's time to start this project up again." And I was really like, actually I was very hesitant at first because different reasons. I'd gotten close to my 50 pages of my own version of the story. I was not sure. I had been taught a lot of things about how collaboration works, and I thought, okay, we're gonna need a contract, we're gonna need all these different things, but it is kind of, I don't know. It was hard for me to balance what I thought was being professional versus also it being a passion project and us working together. So I was hesitant at first because I just was trying to figure out like how am I supposed to do this? Because they're telling me all these legal things you're supposed to do at SC. But that got worked out. And then I remember we met. I don't know, are there magic mushrooms in Cleveland?
Not magic, mellow mushroom. Is it
Mellow mushroom? Oh, I thought it was magic.
Mellow mushroom, we made a mellow mushroom. It was in January, right before the pandemic.
Yeah.
You meet your brother, Mellow,
Yeah. That was like our first meeting. And then my younger brother, he's like 2 years younger, he's like 22 or something. He and also does stuff for worked for Corner in the film department. And so he was helping with this project. So me and Andrew, my brother in Corner, yeah, met there. And that was like our first like project meeting. And he had read the first few pages and we planned what we were going to do. And it was really exciting. I will say that was one of my first big collaboration projects. I had always kind of been a person who kind of like did stuff solo. And yeah, it was one of my first times to really collaborate. And that I think that was a very important step in learning film because collaboration is everything. Okay, Robert, what do you want me to talk about now?
So then it's January, so we did that, and then you go back to LA, USC,
Mm-hmm.
and 3 months later, pandemic hits.
And USC closes.
USC closes, and the next thing you know, you're on your way back home to Birmingham, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we finish the script, and then we decide, let's go ahead, let's shoot this thing, let's shoot it over the summer, because this whole thing will be over by the summer, this whole pandemic thing, everything will be back to normal. So we were all set. We had a whole full student crew that was like ready to go for the summer. It was gonna be awesome. But then that didn't quite work because the pandemic wasn't quite over yet. So then, so the end of summer happens and we had Ashton Henderson, which is also another one of my students. She was gung-ho on getting this movie done and wanting to make it. And so she was like, well, I was like, we really can't do it over the summer. We're not ready yet. And she was like, well, then let's do it in the fall. And I was like, oh, that'll be even harder because we're going to be in school with classes and everything. But it worked out actually kind of good because we got back on campus and we were full time in person. But our campus was locked down, like nobody did, no fraternity parties, no sports, no anything. So like everyone for something to do. Like we even had athletes on the crew that weren't playing sports, and so it actually kind of worked out. So we were able to take all the COVID protocols on set. And the great thing is the school was dealing with all the testing and all of that stuff. So we would just like, we would shoot this like 2 or 3 days every weekend for about two or 3 days. And we'd sometimes rotate crew, get some people a day off or whatever. And somehow we pulled this off in the fall of 2020. In the fall of 2020 when we shot it.
Wait, was it which fall was it? 2020 or 2021? No, wait, it couldn't have been 2021.
I don't know, fall of 2020.
Wow. Oh yeah.
When we started that, we edited it in all of 2021. And then now 2022, we've been sending it out to all the festivals and stuff like that.
It was really fun. It was one of my favorite experiences in my life, honestly. It was really nice.
USC while in Birmingham, while filming, and then she was able to be part of the crew. And so she was actually on set and part of the crew. And so the interesting thing about that, she also ended up editing, being one of the editors as well as her brother. But the cool thing about being part of the crew, there was a few scenes that I thought was really important for Hannah to direct. And you want to talk about those scenes? And we're talking about visual Hannah. this is our visual storytelling class, so we're kind of talking about how the visuals really change in this film from, act 1 to act 2 and act 3. And let's just talk about the visual of the scenes that you directed and what was your vision and thoughts behind that? Because they're definitely very different than the ones that I directed. So go ahead.
So the ones that I directed were the scenes basically most of the scenes when she was with Uriah that were in a dark room, which was basically our black room studio in undergrad at the school. It was actually very difficult to it was one of those things where, like, with me, I knew how I wanted to be expressive about the feelings that Sarah was feeling. But it is kind of a jarring juxtaposition with some of the rest of the film that's like bright and sunny. But yeah, Robert wanted me to direct some of those because in a way some of them were more sensitive, and he wanted me to work with a female actress. And so I thought, okay, how would we do this? And so it seemed like we should shoot mostly in Limbo because, well, one of the reasons is because just practicality. It was kind of easier to do that. But also, emotionally, like if you're going through something and everything's great, say you're in a relationship and everything's going great, and then something happens, like a dude takes advantage of you or someone does something in which you lose your trust, and literally your whole world changes. And that feeling of I feel free, I feel like I can live in this bright city, I can run around, I can do anything, to I'm in the dark and I feel trapped. And that's just from a very, very simple level, that's kind of what it is. It's like Sarah thought that her whole life basically was opening up, that she had a bright future. But then as she starts meeting Uriah, things are getting darker and darker. And then finally, once he takes advantage of her for the first time, it's like completely black. And so that is not just, oh, it looks cool and oh, that was practical, but it's like, yeah, that's how it feels. And I feel like with visual storytelling, you're trying to, like, I don't know if y'all have seen or heard of The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari yet, but that's an expressionistic older film from like 1917 or 20 or something. And the whole idea is, how do you get the outside world, outside of the character, to look like what is going on inside? And so I think that's why the black looked good. There was also, hold on just a second. Okay, there was also just in terms of the edit, I had storyboarded with our DP. I had storyboarded it so that I kind of knew how it would be edited. And if you notice, there's some in the third act as well, but there's what are called jump cuts, where it's not continuity editing. It's when a scene is playing out, but then you cut out like basically like a nanosecond or 1 second of movement, so it looks jumpy because we're missing one of the frames, a few of the frames from A to B. There were a lot of jump cuts in there that were also because it's like if your world before is going more smoothly and now it's rough and it's anxious, and so that scene of her like crying and rocking on the floor had a lot of jump cuts in it because in the editing process, and that was pre-planned because she does feel anxious and overwhelmed. One thing that we, in terms of directing, one thing that we struggled with was our actress was engaged, and her fiance, I think, was a little protective, but regardless of what he was like, she was uncomfortable with any type of physical touch in the scenes. Like, she would not let even the guy who played Uriah even like say touch her hair, touch her nose, touch her shoulder, something that was like non-invasive. She still wouldn't she wouldn't accept that. And that was very tricky. And so it's like, well, how do you show that things are happening to her without showing it? And also it's tricky too, because she was a student. I wasn't a student at the time at my undergrad, but I had just gotten out. So I had a little more liberty, I guess, but she was a student, and Robert is a professor, and so there were a lot of also just dynamics where it's like, okay, how do we make her feel comfortable? It's a little bit like, instead of like, oh, we're paying this actress, she needs to do everything we tell her to do. So, well, a lot of it worked out that we were shooting in Limbo, and we're having more experimental, more like mental and cerebral shots as opposed to like wides and stuff, because she would not even share a bed with the guy who played Uriah, which, I mean, yeah, that's awkward, and I don't really judge her for that, but it did put us it did give us a lot of limitations, but as Corna says, let your limitations be your liberations. So we had to figure out how we could shoot all these scenes and imply that they're in the room together, but they're not. So neither of them were ever in the room together for any of the scenes where it looked like they were, except the one where he like picks her up, and he's like, okay, we're leaving. And I'm surprised she was okay with him picking her up. My cat is playing with my hair clip. And so we would shoot like, we had like 2 or 3 people on gimbal, and also she was uncomfortable with, and this makes sense, she wanted to dress more modestly. So we had her, I can't remember what we had her in, but there were 2 other cameramen, and then I think I was directing the first scene. And we're trying to get as many angles as we can of everything, as much coverage for any time she's in the bed, with the earrings, with her legs, with her hands, anything. And we ended up getting body doubles later as well. But basically we had like 30 minutes to shoot that, and she was out. And then we did the same thing with him, and it was really awkward with the guy with Uriah, because I'm like, at certain times I'm like, so can you take your shirt off? Question mark. And it's like, I don't know, that was uncomfortable for me as well. But considering how difficult it was for them to have chemistry or interact together, well, they had actually better chemistry on set, but for them to do this kind of stuff, I think it turned out okay. And then when we were in Cleveland filming another documentary later, we did body doubles to kind of get just a little bit more. There's some things which is better if someone touches the other one just a little bit. But it was also hard for me because it was very triggering for me in a way, but I didn't tell anybody that it was, because I didn't tell anyone about my experiences. But yeah, that was very difficult, but in a way it allowed for me to kind of work through some of the stuff that had gone through within the past year, because I'd been sexually abused in the past year, and so I was like really working through some of that stuff through the script and through the directing, actually, and the editing. But yeah, that's that.
Excellent. Want to talk a little bit, that's a perfect segue into the whole Cleveland stint. I'll talk about your little trip to Cleveland. So Hannah spent a month in Cleveland last summer. And we worked on a documentary. So what happened was I got a job to shoot a documentary here on a boy named Mikey George. He's a boy who was born, he was a twin, triplets. There were triplets, and 2 boys and a girl. And he was one of the 3 who was born with Down syndrome. And so he's grown up, and fast forward, he's not quite learning how to talk. He's not getting the best education happening in the public school system. So his dad pulls him out of the public school system and starts the first program for special needs students at St. Ed's. You're St. Ed's guy, right? He was in your class? Like you, George?
I know his brother. I didn't like it, and I didn't like
David, yeah. So anyway, so he anyway, so I got this. I met his dad like a few years ago when I would always come back to town for summers and holidays, and he was like, "Hey, you got to do a documentary on my son." And it's an amazing story. He has Down syndrome. I got him into St. Ed's. He ended up getting leukemia, and he was in the hospital. And then the football team came, and they won a state championship, and they dedicated it to him. And you visited him at the hospital with the trophy and everything. And then and he recovered. And so it's a great documentary, you gotta do a story on this. I was like, all right, great, let's do it. But this was in the winter, and I was like, okay, I'm heading back to Alabama. Beach, I'll be back for the summer. I come back in the summer, turns out a few months later, leukemia came back, the cancer came back, and he ended up passing away. And so the summer came, and I was like, I just didn't talk about it at all with the, we kind of let things sort of go. And then about a year later, I talked to his dad, I was like, hey, you still interested in doing that documentary? He's like, yeah, absolutely, absolutely, let's do it. We have to do it, we have to tell the story. So I was like, all right, so I put together a crew of 4 of my top students. And I brought them from Alabama to Cleveland for a month, and we filmed all over Cleveland, and we did I think we did a total of 32 interviews.
Mm.
Family members and friends, and like the St. Louis football coach, and then the kid and his doctors and his teachers. And we are still in the post-production process. As a matter of fact, I literally just met with the dad this weekend, and we were talking about getting this thing started again.
Oh, wow.
So we kind of put it on pause for a while because it was starting to become a little too emotional for the family members to revisit everything. But now we're sort of like kind of like getting ready to get started back with it again. So yeah, we filmed that all in Cleveland. While we were here, we did a few little things with to finish up the final edits for the Magic City. One being the body double. We hired the body double in Cleveland. We decided that the father was a really not that exciting of an actor. He was probably, he didn't have that many choices, and that's just who the casting agent sent us. And we're like, okay, we just got to use them. And so then his performance was really bland, and we were just like, okay, let's just cut out as much dialogue as we possibly can.
You were like, I can't stand his voice. I can't stand his voice. And so we kept cutting out every time he talked.
As much as possible where you didn't do a story, we just like kept them absolute minimum. And then we're like, but it's still not like and then so I was like, okay. So we shot, we already had shot the scene of him drinking the iced tea all the time, right? So here we shot an insert of the whiskey being poured into the iced tea to kind of add to his character. We already had the visual of the iced tea, so just that adding that one visual of the whiskey being poured into the iced tea kind of changes his character, and it kind of is like, oh, that's why he's so bland and blah and boring, because he's drunk all the time.
Yeah, and I had a lot to learn because in my mind, when you write a script, there's things that there's there's things that come across in the script that don't come across as well as you think visually, and that happened a lot with this. There was a way that I imagined certain things in a very subtle way coming across, but they didn't work as well visually for some whatever reason. And so I actually realized, like, from script to screen, there's some things that just have to change because some things do work better on paper, or because there's a variety of factors. It's like the shots all convey something, the lighting conveys something, the actors convey something, and so you never completely know what you're going to get when you turn like a script into a film. So that was one of those things. I was like, he shouldn't drink alcohol, he's not like that, he's not that type of Southerner. But then visually it didn't come across why he was acting the way he acted, and so it's like, all right, I at first was unsure, but then it's like, yeah, we do need this, like, for sure. To add the alcohol to the tea and stuff, because there's just some stuff that even if just doesn't work on screen when you write it. Well, because that was one of my first scripts, I would say. Now that I'm working on making films still, I'm getting better at knowing what will convey visually. That was one of my first full scripts, so it's probably the third feature I'd written or something. So I was new still.
One more shot that we shot in Cleveland was, I really had, so Leon Bibb, anyone know who he is, Leon Bibb? Okay, he was the reporter that at the end of the film that was on the TV screen, and he talked about the arrest and the Ryan Nixon and all that stuff. And I was like, okay, I love this guy. This was my reporter growing up in Cleveland, Leon Bibb. He was always on the news. Now he does a little thing on Sunday mornings. He just like does a little half-hour show. So he's still working, but he's kind of retired. And I was like, I gotta have Leon Bibb in this movie. It has to be Leon Bibb. So I contacted my friends. I contacted my friend Maureen Kyle, who's a newscaster on Channel 3 NBC, because her father was my football coach, Kyle at St. Ignatius. And anyway, so I contacted her. She got me in contact with Leon Bibb. Next thing you know, Leon Bibb shows up. I was like, oh, thank you so much for coming. So we shot. See, were you there the day when we shot with Leon?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we shot with Leon, and it was great. And it turns out he was born in Alabama.
Oh,
So
I
that
forgot about that.
Actually, yeah, so he was born in Alabama, and he was the first major black broadcaster in the state of Ohio on a major network. So, I just thought it was so important that just a little Easter egg I put in there that, you know what I mean? But for me, that was like really important. For everyone else, okay, for most of the audience, okay, it's just newscaster, but for me, it's like, I had to have that. I had to have Leon. And then he shot a scene and it was awesome. He was so professional, and he stayed for like another half hour to talk to the crew. Remember, he was just like hanging out and telling stories. Awesome dude. So a lot of like the Cleveland connections here too. So I always like that Cleveland connection, and of course the line. I don't want to go to Cleveland. It snows there. Remember? Well, oh, you love it. It snows up north. Well, Canada, the first day of snow, by the way. And I'm not used to it. I've gotten soft by living in the South. I am so not ready for winter.
Wait, it's already snowing?
Oh, yeah.
What?
Yeah,
Oh
it's
my.
snow, and it's freezing cold, and there's ice, and you can slip on it and break your back.
No.
A lot of fun. So,
Oh my.
but anyway, what I want to do is open it up to a few questions, and then we'll let Hannah go and start her day.
Oh, just FYI, there's 8 minutes left on my Zoom.
8 minutes left for questions. Ready? And go ahead, Cameron.
Where'd you film the farm scenes?
The farm scenes, that was actually a place, actually next to my house. It was called, what was the name? I can't remember. Baker? No, wait.
Well, Baker Farm, yeah.
Baker Farm, yeah. And it was right near my house, and I actually had to do location scouting for it, but it ended up being really good. And it was like a Christmas tree farm actually. And we just tried to cut out the Christmas trees. So yeah. That's in Alabama. Well, wait, there was one farm though that was in Cleveland.
Oh, that's right. We shot some B-roll in Cleveland.
Yeah, the animals.
We needed more animals. We didn't have enough farm animals, so we had to get a bunch of like pigs and all this other stuff. So I contacted Mike Went, who works with the film commissioner here. He's my buddy. I was like, yeah, I need a farm out there with a bunch of animals. And then we went right after we drove to camp. And yeah, we filmed it there.
Yeah, that's fun. I loved it. I loved it around all the animals.
That farm was very visual. It was an important visual element for the film. And that was our most expensive location, but it was worth it because like we needed it to look the real deal.
Yeah.
Like,
And we had like limited time, like because you're like renting out a day. And so it's like, okay, we have to get all through these scenes by like today because we're only paying for the day, things like that. So it did make it complicated, but it was good. I loved it.
and then we shot another farm because we were missing like the river. So we actually put it together with different locations. So
Oh, there were 3 farms. You're right.
yeah, so we put like 3 farms. Very similar to how we shot last summer, White Noise, with Adam Driver.
Mhm.
The film was coming out in a month, actually in December. We shot like 7 different colleges in Northeast Ohio and made it one college campus. So like we got the visual on, from Overland to Akron and all over the place. Anyway, another question we have time for? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say it's good. It's good to hear like the stories. It's always a balance of like the time you have, the budget, and the resources. So it's cool to see a student production and a future being made. So just good work, I guess.
Yeah, that and I just
Anyone
want to
else?
and well, I just want to say real quick, like making a feature, it doesn't matter how good or bad it is huge. If you can make a feature, you are like leaps and bounds above other people in terms of like if you tell someone you did a feature, they're not going to be like, oh, is it amazing? Is whatever, they're gonna be like, you did a feature, and that's for writing it and making it as well. So yeah, making stuff. Don't try to be a perfectionist, just make stuff. Okay, I'm ready.
You have questions? Go ahead.
How long did production, like shooting, take?
Oh, well, I think it took us at first. It took us like a fall semester for most of the shots, and then we did reshoots. So maybe pretty much about a fall semester, right?
Yeah, about 3 days a week, fall semester.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think it was a total of 25 days or something.
Yeah. And then reshoots weren't that long either.
It was about 5 days of reshoots.
Yeah.
How much time you got left on that Zoom there?
4 minutes, but basically 5 minutes.
Time for one more question, otherwise we'll have Hannah give her closing remarks. Okay, Hannah, anything in closing? Any suggestions for these students up here,
I think
up north in snowy Cleveland?
I think so. I'm teaching a media and a careers class as what an intro class, and I think the advice I would give you, is what I told them, right? So I'm not picking on you, but I will say, right now, nobody cares about you. In the industry, nobody cares about you. Everyone has a script, everyone has a movie, everyone has something to offer. You have to make people care about you, because nobody naturally will, and people will backstab and whatever. And so if you're not putting your best forward, if you're not, and this is what I tell my media students, like, you have to make people care, and one of the ways you make them care is by just being kind and working hard, and that will get you farther than anything ever in the world. I think the only reason that Corna asked me and my brother to do a lot of things is we worked hard and we tried to be respectful and kind, and tried to be humble. And I think humility is definitely gonna be your biggest, if you can develop humility, or if you have humility already, you're ahead. If you can foster that, you're gonna get so much farther in your life. At the end of the day, people don't care what you've written, what you've done. They care about whether or not they want to be next to you and work with you. And if you show that you don't, if you don't show that you care, if you're like, yeah, people will just have to take me as I am or whatever, you will never get anywhere. Might get somewhere for a little bit, not long. So nobody cares about you automatically. You're gonna find that when you try to get out and make something, people are going to be like, why would I put my trust in you? One way to make them care is to ask yourself why you are pursuing film, why you are doing what you are doing, in terms of who you are as a person and what you want to accomplish. Another way to make them care is if you care about them. If you care about someone, just being respected, being kind, whatever, if you care about them, then people will start caring about you. So you have to adapt. You have to have boundaries. You can't say yes and yes and yes to every project, but basically you have to have a servant's heart. You have to know why you're doing certain things. You have to know that people are more interested in who you are as a person than your work. And if anything about you is someone who, you can be quiet, you can be shy, you can be loud, you can be extroverted. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with your attitude. So I think think about what impressions you're making. Are you the kind of person that your classmate would come up and say, hey, do you want to collaborate with? And if you're not, and if that hasn't happened, or if you are like, I would never collaborate with my classmates, you might be the problem. So collaboration is everything. Attitude is everything. Nobody automatically cares, and if you're not putting any effort in, then people really don't care. It's like a negative. It's like they hate you. So use this opportunity in college to have your own network of classmates, and just, yeah. And there's less than a minute left, so I'm gonna stop talking.
Thank you so much, Hannah.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you guys for listening to me. Bye. You keep warm now. All right, I'm gonna end the Zoom. Bye.
All right. Yeah.
See ya.